So tell me who you are, what you do, subvert that, explain yourself. You can look into the lens, you don't have to. Just be yourself.
Sounds good. I'm Josh Terry. Um, I write, I make content, I'm a musician, and I'm big into learning theory. It's just the study of learning itself. So, a lot of the things that I talk about kind of spread across a lot of different disciplines. I'm starting to write articles about just kind of whatever is on my mind and explore how I can I want to turn this TikTok content into something beyond what it normally is. I don't think it's been explored as much as it could be. Um, Content creation is this weird thing that it's impossible at the beginning, and then once you get in a bit of a flow of it, it's fairly easy, which means that when you get to that point, you've turned it into a machine, and I want to turn it into a machine that gets a little bit better all the time.
How did you get to that point as a content creator?
I gave up. So when I initially was creating content for, well, initially by that I mean years, I always got stuck in what I called the masterpiece syndrome, perfectionism and all of that. And the way I got out of it was I didn't do what I was trained to do. I was trained in music, and that was the space that I had explored for years. But when you get trained in something, you see what can go wrong. You see all the flaws, and you don't spend time enjoying it. So I was initially studying some financial stuff, and I noticed some things that I found interesting, and I just made some content about it kind of offhand. That was the first thing that went viral. There was a lot that led up to that, in that I was slowly getting my life together and getting more comfortable with my life. And in that process, I was doing simpler things. And as I did simpler things, I did things I gave less fucks about. Um, and each time I did that, it got easier. So I started noticing that that was just a critical element in the creative process. So that enabled me to keep going. So I kept making videos that were sort of offhand, and it's enabled me to, stay relaxed enough to not get stuck in the perfectionist mindset, which I talk about myself because I've experienced a lot. But it's made it possible to turn it into something, is creating from a more relaxed mindset.
Explain to me how your decade of academia, learning, education, absorbing programs of who you want to be, what you want to do, how people define you, how you define yourself, and then all that inertia, which you stumble upon an accident that create that it was successful,
Yeah.
right? A viral video, and you have to. There's a gap there where you have to bridge the former paradigm and where you are presently. Can you explain to me how you personally filled that gap and what that process is like? Because I think a lot of people, creatives, even professionals, either struggle with reconciling with that or the process of repeating that to get the result again.
Yeah. It's it's sort of like one of those chicken or the egg problems, I think. When we initially try to create something, the way we usually do it is by envisioning something. And we then try to achieve that vision. But generally, whenever you envision something, it's outside the bounds of what you can possibly do. It's outside of your current skill level. So you're not capable of it. And what we do is we then take a person, you, the creator, we take a person that is incapable of that creation and try to get them to make that thing. When in reality, if you want to make that thing, the way you do it is you become the person who is capable of that. And that takes a totally different experience and a totally different practice to get there. So I think a better way to approach it is to do the things that you're already capable of. And if you switch between the thing that you want to do into the thing that you're capable of doing, then you start doing things. You start creating. And once you're at the point where you're creating, you start getting better. Because the reality is there's no magic trick that gets you there. It's increase in skill, which is very slow. It's a very slow slog. There are lots of tricks in life, but you can apply tricks when you're skilled at applying tricks. They're all skill sets that have to be built up. So if you can switch your mind from trying to achieve the big goal to becoming the person who could do the big goal, then the smaller ideas seem more palatable, because most of us that are in the creative realm, we see the small things that we're capable of now and we mock them, we belittle them. We think of them as like shallow and like, well, I could do so much better. And it's like, yeah, you could, but you can't. Not right now. Yeah. It's just not a thing. Yeah. Or if you could do it even simpler than that. Yeah, you could, but you aren't. You aren't currently making it. So if you start doing what you can do, then you start doing much smaller things, but you get way more reps in, and your skill increases faster than everyone around you. And this is a concept that I've known for years. I teach it. I taught it for probably over a decade. But these are things that are like, all of these things are hard to integrate and apply in your own life. And in some places of my life, I would excel at applying that concept. And in those areas of my life, I thrived. In the places where I couldn't apply it, I would struggle. And in content creation, I'd always try to make the masterpiece. And it was a waste of my time because I wasn't the person that was capable of creating the masterpiece. I'm still not. I shouldn't be. I'm 31. That's not old. I hope I create a masterpiece piece of content when I'm 50 and then another one when I'm 80, because why the hell not?
I struggle with, in school, and I was a big fish in a small pond. But this is narcissistic, and I think a lot of artists struggle with like a delusion of grandeur, maybe.
And it might be true too.
Yeah. But I honestly thought I was like a wonderkind or something.
Yeah.
I thought I was. I thought, wow, well, look at the Beatles. You know, they did their whole run in their 20s.
Yeah. Or
Paul Thomas Anderson made his first 3 films in his 20s. He got to There Will Be Blood before he hit 40.
Yeah.
So there's I'm falling behind. It hasn't happened for me yet. Like, did you ever struggle with that, and how did you subvert that or reconcile with that?
Oh God, yeah. Anybody that has any sort of talent that's recognized at a young age, I think, struggles with that. The feeling that we're just running out of time and falling short at every turn. And once again, going back to the giving up idea, that was part of it. Was I went, oh, okay, I'm not that talented. Not in a self-deprecating or self-bashing way, but in the way of, oh, I'm just another person. I'm just another dude. And yeah, I do have some strengths, but obviously those strengths they aren't the high dollar currency that we think they are. Because the thing that really gets us the results is the iteration and the exploration and the making small things that you're capable of. And I was busy worrying about how good I might be instead of making anything worthwhile. So it takes, some would call it an ego death of a type, where you have to let that part of who you are go. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing. It's super painful. But every aspect of my life that I've, finally been willing to take on the archetype of the fool, I've succeeded at. Where it's, I let go of my preconceived notions of how good I should be, and then I start to look at where I am and go, okay, I can look ridiculous in this space. And that's what got me in good financial health. That's what helped me find my artistic color palette, if you will. Find my voice there. It's in my music, in my methods of content creation. All of those things came from, it becoming an option for me to do something stupid. And once it became an option, then I did some stupid things, and then I noticed some cool things that I was doing, and I started doing more of those.
And you're so self-aware, and that's seemingly more rare to find. How would you, if, if you're diagnosing someone who's coming at you with help, assistance, um, coaching, and you know this guy's not self-aware. He thinks he's this, and he's not that, and that's holding him back. However, you diagnose that in your own way. How do you activate a person? How do you, without psychedelics, kill that ego or whatever that is? Like, how do you awaken that person who is self-aware? Because that is such a common denominator in successful people who are able to say, I'm going to try being a fool for a little bit.
Yeah.
There are some people who win because they are a fool, but they don't know that that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So there's an ignorance is bliss sort of dichotomy there. But how would you wake someone up, so to speak?
You wake them up by teaching them the difference between damage and discomfort. So all of the protection that we give ourselves when we are concerned that somebody might see us do something silly, all of the perfectionism that stops us from trying things, all of that is for the fear of damage. It's a legitimate fear, whether it's that we're afraid that we're gonna mess up in the physical realm and injure ourselves, or it's that we're going to mess up in the social realm and do something that looks stupid and gets us banned from the tribe, and we have to wander in the wilderness and starve to death. Whatever it is, it's a fear of legitimate damage. So if you can teach someone the difference between damage and discomfort, they can start making better decisions about when to act the fool and when to actually protect themselves. So you learn how to go into uncomfortable situations and see them ahead of time as this will be uncomfortable. Like, you have to register it. And when you register, this will be uncomfortable and I will choose to go into it. And then you go into it and you're uncomfortable. Well, discomfort is a warning that damage might occur. So if you can go into this discomfort and feel it with the pre-knowledge of I'm going to be fine, like, if, say, for example, a roller coaster, right? You can calculate out mathematically, you're likely to not die in this situation. And if you're uncomfortable with roller coasters, that would be an example of it. A really good one is cold exposure. You step into some cold water, but you're in a warm bathroom, right? you know that you're not at risk of death. You're not at risk of harm. So if you can voluntarily see something that is uncomfortable and step into it, then you can stand there in that discomfort and see that you're not getting harmed. And when you see that, you start to separate the two. You start to separate the damage and the discomfort. And once you have that heightened perception of the two, the fool becomes an option. Because being the fool is uncomfortable. It's freeing once you dive into it. It's delightful. It's amazing. But it's uncomfortable to step into the fool. But once you see the difference between damage and discomfort, you can look at the concept of the fool, of, hey, you can make these mistakes, people can judge you, you can be embarrassing, you can do all these other things, and you will have an understanding that even though this sucks, you're going to be fine. And if you know that, then you can try it. And then once you try it and you prove it to be true, you can try it again. You get stronger. And now stepping into the archetype of the fool becomes a skill in and of itself, something that you can practice.
We beat that out of kids at a very young age.
Yes, we do.
Programming or what, sometimes actual beatings.
Yeah.
We simultaneously, but that's a beautiful program. We either deprogram people and say that is a defect in some sort of societal norm. I know that was, you're describing, what you're saying fills me with so much glee and a little bit of trauma, because I think that was my natural state as a child.
Yes.
And I was told that is a defect. But for me, it was a source, an engine of infinite possibilities.
Yeah, I remember, like, I've talked with a lot of people about these concepts, and I've had lots of people, like, I'll bring up the idea of cold exposure, and we'll talk about, like, in the past, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember, like, running out in the cold and feeling like ecstasy, like feeling like this amazing liberation as a child, being like, wow, this powerful force of nature is overwhelming, and here I am living in it, and it's great. And I want to point out that the fear is still legitimate. It's super legitimate. And yeah, it's trained into us. There also might be an instinctual fear there as well, because, like, cold is no joke. Like cold is dangerous. So the fact that we grow up fearful, I think it's really important to recognize that it has its roots in something valuable, which is we're trying to not die. Like, that's good. And
like fasting is sort of unnatural.
Yeah. Fasting is another great example of a discomfort that does not harm you at the beginning. It harms you down the road, but you feel the initial discomfort of, a 24-hour fast or a couple-day fast, and that sensation, what it's telling you is, hey, if you keep going in this direction, you might die. You're going to be in trouble. So the fear is not bad. The fear is legitimate, and I'd say smart, right? It reminds me of, there's an expression, a sailor that isn't afraid of the ocean is a dead sailor. As in other words, you should have a healthy fear of this amazing force of nature. And there's amazing forces washing all around us, whether they're social forces or physical forces. Like, we're in danger all the time. So it's still reasonable for us to fear the things that could cause us harm. But if every time we feel a sensation of discomfort, which is a warning that damage might occur, not actual damage, and we run away at that moment, then what happens is our perception changes from damage is bad to discomfort is bad. And when that happens, it's basically a slippery slope to hell on earth at that point. Like, it's a slippery slope to nothingness, because there is always another discomfort. You can get to a point of low amounts of damage in your life. You can't get to a point where there is no discomfort. You can have the most palatial estate and the most luxurious lifestyle, and you will still be able to find discomfort. So if discomfort is the thing that you try to run away from, then there's no end, and it gets worse every time, because when you step away from a discomfort, your tolerance for discomfort lessens. So you really have to spot the difference between the two. So if you see the fool as discomfort, you will consistently try to be less and less embarrassing. And if you try to become less and less embarrassing, what you'll do is you'll moderate your behavior more and more until you get to the point that you are as close to neutral as you can be. You will try to turn yourself into a cardboard cutout of yourself, because any form of change from what might be socially acceptable is a risk. So that's a really slippery slope. That's very dangerous. But if instead you see the difference, where it's like, oh, I can maintain this social discomfort in my foolishness and not be harmed by it, then you can actually learn to do more and more of it, and actually become more comfortable in the discomfort, and get to a point where you even enjoy it, and then you feel like a magician, because you are.
You're forming new habits, essentially, which creates new possibilities and new opportunities, and then your brain becomes consciously or subconsciously attracted to these opportunities. And if you condition your neurons essentially to discomfort, you're going to want to put yourself in more extreme discomforts that yield an even more positive result down the line.
And there's another point to this. It's so important, is that pretty much anytime we come up with a good idea, we want to turn it into a religion and make it a fixed thing. But it's like, this is a concept that's really valuable, but at the same time, it doesn't mean you need to do it perfectly and apply it to everything. So if you're there are many things I'm still afraid of, and there are many things that I'm still close to non-functional at, but I've chosen to apply this idea in a couple places in my life, and my life has improved exponentially because of it. And one of the mistakes we run into when we latch onto a good idea, because I really do think this is a good idea, is we then try to apply it everywhere. And that, to me, sounds exhausting. I don't want to do that. There's lots of stuff I'm still afraid of, and I don't feel any need right now to go jump into those discomforts. There are plenty of discomforts. So I'd say, along with this idea, it's like, you have to choose your discomfort. You don't want to go try to fix all of the things, because if you fix 3 things, you're way ahead. My favorite way of thinking about this now is, if you take care of your finances in a basic way, and by that I mean like you start to spend less than you make, basically, if you do that and you eat relatively healthy food and you exercise, you are now in the top 1% of Earth. Like, we talk about the 1%ers as this like really high level thing that we should be envious of, and like maybe they're they're great evil oppressors, or how there's a lot of different narratives about what the top 1% is. But they're generally looked upon as this kind of elusive small group. I mean, if you do the math, it's 1 in 100. And the reality is, most people are spending more than they make. They are eating food that is harming them, and they don't have any sort of a movement practice at all. And their bodies are deteriorating. So if you were to do those 3 things, you would be in the top 1%. So I bring that up because it's like, you want to learn how to choose your battles, and they don't have to be, a million nuanced things. They can be a couple of things that you choose to win at, and you become one of the most powerful people on earth.
Definitely in your social circle at the very least. And influence is a beautiful thing to tap into for sure. I want to cut right here, and you have one of those in you.
So the book is connected to creativity. The book is it's about a concept that enables creativity. But I see it as a learning theory concept. And the way I talk about it is in that this is a concept that enables excellence. So one of the things you can pursue is creativity. That's one of the things you can achieve excellence in. And the basic idea behind the book is that we all have a line of comfort between boredom and anxiety. And anxiety is the thing that we would call too much, too difficult, too scary. And boredom is the thing that we would call not enough, things I've already seen, bleh, right? It's the stuff that you already know. And especially in this day and age, anxiety is a big problem. And we talk about it like it's a horrible thing that we need to go away from. But I believe that anxiety is addictive, and most of us don't realize it. Anxiety is the default mode to go into, and boredom is the thing that we run away from. Boredom is the actual pain that we are afraid of. So the reason why this happens is when you first learn something, step 1 is reach out into newness and grab something that you've never touched before and integrate it. That's the very first step in learning anything. You have to do that. You have to absorb something new. And then after you've initially had that happen, you have to, step 2 is play with it, explore it, get better at it. But the problem lies in the fact that when you initially reach out and grab that new thing and you succeed at it, your reward systems fire. And when your reward systems fire and you get a hit of dopamine, your wiring is formed almost immediately, where your brain says, oh, you succeeded at reaching out and getting a new thing. Therefore, the process of learning must be to reach out and get new things. So from that moment onwards, we tend to try to constantly level up. We try to constantly absorb the new material. We try to, go to the next level of whatever we're working on. But the reality of learning is that's just step 1. We have to take whatever we've learned and explore it to really level up, to really get good. And this is a concept that enables excellence in any field, which is notice that anxiety itself is a default mode, an addictive thing that we're pulled into. And boredom is something that we by default think is bad because we don't get dopamine inside of boredom. Anxiety sucks, but we get dopamine inside of anxiety. So pushing into boredom is, in a lot of ways, way more painful. As bad as anxiety is, and I don't in any way want to deny how rough anxiety is. It sucks. But pushing into boredom is often the greater initial discomfort, but the bigger reward on the back end. Because pushing into boredom allows you to do small things. I mean, that's what happens when you push into boredom is you start doing smaller things that are well within your capability. But the thing is when you start doing things that are well within your capability, you start excelling at them. And we think that, oh, okay, well, I want to excel at this hard thing over here. We don't realize that excelling in itself is a practice. Being good at stuff is a skill. So if you go ahead and do things that are within your ability, you get practice being good at stuff. And that does a whole bunch of things. It ups your self-worth. It ups your pride. It gives you a different set of happy chemicals. It makes you feel like you can go do something more challenging, and it makes you capable of it. Because what you do is you get reps on a skill when you push into the mundane aspects of life. There's another element of this, which is pushing into anxiety doesn't get you a better life, but pushing into boredom does. And the reason why is when you push into anxiety, your tolerance for boredom decreases. When you push into boredom, your overall tolerance widens. Because when you push into boredom, you are increasing how much you can handle empty space, which is really hard for the human brain. And then when you do that, you relax, which that's rest, and that strengthens you, which makes you more capable of pushing into anxiety.
What are your thoughts, man? Sounds like now you're making boredom sexy in a way. I think it can be a place to, like, it can be a well to draw creativity or inspiration or some sort of source from. Is it not? So
I mean,
talk to me about that.
The best sex can come out of this type of behavior, honestly, because it's about slowing down and noticing what's around you. And so, yeah, it is a sexy concept. Let's.
I want you to think about what you're going to say. I know you know what you're. Listen, I apologize.
Oh, you're good. So there's two basic ways of meditating that I know of. And the practice of meditation is generally this. It's focus on one thing so much that you can notice everything else. That's basically it. So a meditation where it's like focus on your breath. Like the reason why you do that is you focus on your breath so you notice when your brain starts thinking about how you want to order a pizza delivery. It's you focus on your breath so that you get distracted by the little pain in your shoulder. The distraction is actually kind of the point. A lot of people say, "Oh, I can't learn to meditate. I'm bad at focusing." It's like that's why you meditate is so that you start to notice how you get distracted. And in the process of that noticing, you gain an ability to surf the waves of your mind. So that's kind of the classical idea of meditation so far as I understand it. Then there's this other aspect, which is just being somewhere and letting what happens happen without trying to push the limit of whatever that moment is. So that is, doing a skill set that you're practicing at a slightly lower level than your max capacity. That is, like you said, taking a shower and coming up with a good idea. It's going for a walk. Yes, a ton of my good ideas come from walks. I love walks. I wouldn't be the same person without walks. Taking a walk is one of the most valuable low-cost self-improvement things you can do, I think. And that aspect of meditation is sort of learning to be okay with that situation where you aren't pressed for something to do. Because most of the time we have an instinctive drive to push. And we have to pull back on that to have the space and energy to achieve. So I want to write a better book than I could write. And the way to fuck that up is for me to get masterpiece syndrome. So I'm trying to not do that, and I'm working with some different people to have them look over the book and see if I can communicate these ideas the best way they can be communicated. I don't know what that process is like. I've never written a book, so it's a new adventure for me. I really have no clue, and that's kind of exciting because I'm starting to get to a point in my life where I can be comfortable with an experience like that and enjoy it. And I wasn't able to do that in the past. And the way I got comfortable with it is by following the book. It was astonishing as I started to write it that I got distracted several times from the writing process. And I realized that the reason why was always because I wasn't doing what I was putting down in the book. I wasn't pulling back and doing what I could do. I was pushing too far into my capabilities. I was trying to discover too many things at once. I want to point out, and this is all laid out in the book too, but I want to point out, this is specifically for ambitious people. This book is specifically for people that want to push as hard as they possibly fucking can. It's a book for people with dreams. It's not a book for people that want to lay back. This is a counterintuitive idea for the people that want to accomplish things. So I am all for pushing. I am all for achieving at a high level. And that's what I'm writing about. But one of the things that gets you to that high level is not redlining yourself to exhaustion. I was a workaholic when I was 20. And my drive to achieve destroyed me. And I got nothing out of it. So I think there are a lot of people out there that have a really beautiful desire to really achieve. And their instincts are giving them a little bit of trouble. And the point of the book is to help with that. So I had a funny moment where I was asked for 2 weeks when I initially announced that I was going to write the book if I was going to self-publish or if I was going to go with a publisher. And at the end of those 2 weeks, I realized, wow, I'm thinking about whether I'm going to go with a publisher or self-publish, and I'm not typing. Like, I'm not writing a book, which basically what that is within this framework is I'm trying to go solve some unknown thing that I'm not ready to solve yet. But I can type. So why don't I go type? And then when I realized that, I went and I started typing again. And lo and behold, there's a book. So I've got the first draft finished. I'm working with some folks. Thank you. I'm working with some folks, and eventually it'll turn into a finished project.
Are you going to self-publish, or are you going to...
No clue.
It's
no
cool
clue.
to have the product. I think about this movie making. It's like I have not made a feature film in 6 years, and I felt like during the blackouts, I was like, I'm going to make a movie. I have the drive. and I don't give a fuck like I'm the biggest idiot you've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
What Bitcoin or crypto is, why should I care? Where's it going? What does it mean? Your experience with it, and just explain it to me.
Okay. So Bitcoin is a list. It's literally just a file, pretty much, with a list. And it's a list that says who owns what. And that is revolutionary. Because when you own Bitcoin, you don't own an item. You don't own even a number. You aren't given a number that is the Bitcoin. You are given an entry into a list. And that list is maintained by millions of computers all around the world. And for that list to be compromised, you would need to control more than half of those computers. And there is a defined amount of those Bitcoin that are programmed to appear. There's never to be more than 21 million, sorry. And because of that, we can put those numbers in perspective. So far as I can tell, money has only ever needed two basic things. It has needed agreement and limitation. If money is unlimited, we can't see it in perspective. So it starts to lose its value and starts to not be utilized as well. And obviously, if nobody agrees that something is money, then it doesn't work as money. Bitcoin has mastered the concept of limitation, and it the agreement is beyond imagination in terms of how far it's progressed so far. I mean, more people own Bitcoin than like any stock on Earth. Yeah, it's one of the most widely held assets on Earth already, and that gives it an adoption edge. It gives it a security edge because the more people are involved, the more secure it is because the more computers are checking that list. And it gives it an adoption edge because of network effects. Anytime you have a network, say, for example, cell phones, if you were to make one cell phone and own one cell phone, that's not very useful. But if you have one cell phone, you have a reason to have somebody else get a cell phone. So if two people have a cell phone, they have like twice as much reason to have a third person get a cell phone. And the cell phone is twice as useful. So whatever network is first adopted is usually the network that wins. So in the cryptocurrency world, there's a lot of arguments about, well, why Bitcoin? Couldn't any other coin just take over at any moment? And the answer is no, because network effects are so powerful. And the network effect behind Bitcoin is astonishing. Its market cap is bigger than Visa. It's bigger than the largest financial company in the world. It's larger than the GDP of multiple countries. It's huge, and in this case, the large quantity of people involved actually is one of the things that makes it a good bet.
A good bet versus
the other cryptocurrencies out there. I mean, you actually could make an argument based on that for Dogecoin, believe it or not. But Dogecoin is a deflationary currency. I mean, an inflationary currency. Sorry, that is constantly reducing in value. So it doesn't have the same limitation that Bitcoin does.
Well, talk to me about can the government regulate Bitcoin, and could it ever be the currency? From what I understand, um, it's the same currency in the states that it would be in Iran or Cuba, right?
Yeah.
So explain to me the disruption of what that means. That's one thing I can never really wrap my mind around.
Yeah, it's potentially world changing. It's potentially catastrophic, and it's potentially nothing at all. I doubt it will be totally nothing at all. I think it has a lot of potential to make the world better. So the initial question is sort of, can somebody regulate it, control it, that type of thing? And in terms of the system itself, not really, because it's already too big. No one government can go in and change Bitcoin. Now, can you regulate how the citizens of a country interact with Bitcoin? Sure, because you can tell people what to do. Will they do it? Who knows? That's always a wide open question. But I think it's a really amazing thing that we could create something that is so powerful that it would be hard for any one government to take over and manipulate or break. So to me, that's a point in its favor.
What does the existence of Bitcoin, what sort of impact can that have on our government in terms of, the government's essentially a business. The U.S. government is essentially the largest corporation in our state, in our country. I mean, how does this impact that? And doesn't that make it a threat to the U.S. government?
We don't know, and potentially yes. I think, and I want to point out that this is a worldwide thing. So, any government could possibly consider it a threat. But when when humans decide to innovate and create something that is becomes a fabric of society, and it becomes the way things are, when governments fight that, it's generally doesn't end well for the government. And historically speaking, that generally doesn't end well. And I'm not saying it as a revolutionary type phrasing. Like it's I'm not ready to get up in arms about anything at the moment.
Yeah, you're saying it dispassionately, just
yeah. It's just that Bitcoin is becoming a way that people interact. It's getting bigger than somebody's product or a coin that somebody wants to pump or something like that. It's getting to a point where it's a system of a way that people work together.
Break that down to me, because I don't understand what I don't understand.
Yeah.
Can you use an example of that?
Yeah. So I mean, if I were to take a piece of paper and write down you are good for 3 cookies, and then you agreed that was the case, then I could hand you that paper later and you would make me 3 cookies if we were working together in that way. And that simple idea is basically the idea of money right there. And that is how all economies are functioning, that are, you know, using money for trade. And Bitcoin is that piece of paper at its most secure level.
How is it more secure versus USD? I don't understand that.
There are millions of computers protecting it from any sort of change. Because what's happened is somebody made that list, the structure of Bitcoin. They made that list, and they made a system for how people can interact with that list. And then everybody that bought into Bitcoin and started utilizing the blockchain and using their computers to run the Bitcoin network, everybody that did that agreed to be in on those rules. And each time a new computer joined in, by joining in, it was an agreement, because it can't play, right? It can't play with the other computers. It can't play with the other computers unless it follows the rules. So, because computers require, you know, permissions, right? So each time that happens, it becomes more difficult for somebody to come into the game and say, no, we're going to play by a new set of rules. So it's already become so big that the idea of somebody coming in and trying to change the rules is almost inconceivable. So what that means is Bitcoin is the most dependable set of rules available.
I can see that. How does America shift its consciousness into Bitcoin?
I think it's really simple. I don't think it needs to be a big philosophical journey. I don't think it needs to be some revolution or revelation. I think it's just in seeing its utility. I really like the example one person made about computers, where he said, you know, computers used to be something that inspired a lot of fear. And because we were like, okay, well, we can't trust these computers to do things. And now there's a computer in every single lock in every single hotel, and you swipe your card and the computer reads it, right? And the way that change came about was in us just accepting a utility of it. We started to go, oh, this could be useful. And Bitcoin is useful as what we call a store of value, because it's the most dependable place to put a record. It's the most dependable list. So if we buy Bitcoin, then we're buying the most dependable record that we can find of a purchase. So it makes it the most likely to stick around. So it's become a store of value.
I see. Why is that important? Versus tracing the lineage, the history of a dollar, of a $2 bill. Having that information is important. Why? What does that mean? What is that? What is that information? What do we as a society learn from that information?
So there's a practical side of that and a sort of more philosophical side of it. The more practical side is, look, if you are an average person working an average job and you have average finances, that means you probably don't have any investments, which means that your money is going into a savings account. That money is losing value every single year. It has every single year of everybody that's alive in the U.S.
Which means the numbers aren't growing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that means that somebody in that situation is less safe as they get older. Their financial situation is less safe. They aren't able to retain money. They aren't able to retain value because if they're putting dollars into a savings account, they're losing value. So they are they're disadvantaged because of that. And one of the great causes of inequality is people that understand the game of owning assets versus people that don't. And people that own assets that increase in value over time tend to, raise in value and net worth, and the people who don't tend to lose value. So this is something that everyone can own. Like anyone can buy Bitcoin. And that gives people a chance to hold on to something that would retain its value. So it has a very practical application for people that are trying to save money. And for people that want to invest money because it increases in value as well. But just the store of value alone is enough.
Can I see your Bitcoin history? Is that public domain?
Yeah. That's a funny one. A lot of people said that, like, it's still popular to say, like, Bitcoin is where there's a lot of black market activity and stuff like that. Some of the the criminal activity on the Bitcoin blockchain is just like dropping like a rock.
Why?
Because it's all there. All the data is there.
I don't know how you can't lie about that. Like, say I buy a kidney with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Can't I say I bought a sack of potatoes?
Sure, you could, but the way almost all criminals have been caught since there was money is by following the money.
Of course.
And Bitcoin is the most followable money.
Are there taxes?
They're sorting it out. That's, it's new. So there are. Like, you're taxed on gains on Bitcoin, that kind of stuff.
Where do the taxes go?
What?
Where do the taxes go?
Oh, so the taxes are on the purchase and the sale of the Bitcoin.
Can you explain that to me?
So if you buy a stock and it goes up in value and you sell it, then you get taxed on that increase in value.
By?
If you
taxed by whom?
The U.S. government or whatever country you're a citizen of.
So America's making tax money from Bitcoin?
Oh, sure. And Bitcoiners are paying their taxes.
And they're transparent with their taxes? Is that what you're saying?
I said they're paying their taxes. I mean, I'm sure there's people that are not.
Is Bitcoin a corporation?
No, it's an open source software.
It's an open source software governed by whom?
No one. How
can that be?
One person said, I'm going to do this. You want to do it too? Another person joined in. Another person joined in. And because of the agreement of how that system works, you would need more than 50% of the people to agree on a change. And you would need a lot of people to agree on the change at this point. Not saying it couldn't happen.
It could happen.
It absolutely could. But
it's a matter of when on a long enough timeline.
True. And also this is where the idealism starts to pop into it, where it's like there's an ideal that forms every country and every society and every system.
A constitution, and also a religion.
Yeah, yep. And one of the ideals behind Bitcoin is that it shouldn't be changed. So there are many, many fervent people.
This isn't a religion.
That it is a new religion. Yeah. And I mean, I don't normally get into that side because I'm interested in, once again, its utility. It just has a simple purpose that is helpful, I think. And that's the thing I want to share. People believe completely. Once they go down the rabbit hole of it, they tend to
drink the Kool-Aid, one could say.
Yeah, they drink the Kool-Aid. But the thing is the weird part about the system is if somebody's drunk the Kool-Aid, then they want to support that system. It makes it more likely for the system to work.
Just like society.
Yeah, because part of the ideal of Bitcoin is don't mess with it. So if somebody wanted to mess with it, a bunch of people would say, hey, don't do it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, do you believe in any random cryptocurrency that could work? No. Do you believe in millions of people from all around the world collecting around an idea based on logic, mathematics, and science and code? Yeah, that seems pretty logical. That's way more reasonable than most religions and political philosophies.
Bitcoin, by its design, exists digitally, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot essentially cash in my Bitcoin and transition it into some sort of physical form?
Nope.
So this is.
But you can take it with you physically on a flash drive.
So it exists in a cloud, or it exists? How does that? I don't understand that.
So
these all have to exist in servers.
The network, yes, is on the servers, the computers, and everything. But I mean, you have an identity, right? Mm-hmm. So you can take that with you.
I see. And it exists simultaneously. So it's essentially like taking out, going to an ATM and taking out cash to have on hand, but I simultaneously have most of my money in the bank. Mm-hmm. Is it like that? Is that what you mean?
You could think of it that way.
If you want to walk outside and your intention is to go down a flea market and you don't want to take your phone for some reason, and you only want to take 1,000 Bitcoins, whatever that is, you can do that?
You would have to believe in computers for you to want to buy into Bitcoin. If you thought that computers would stop working at some point in the future, then you wouldn't want to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. So and that's just as likely as, I think probabilistically
it's just as likely as every other apocalypse.
Of course. And so apocalypses are, not to have such a fatalist worldview, but
they're pretty normal.
They're pretty normal, consistent, inevitable. Mm-hmm. So if there's a blackout, I can't pay for anything through Bitcoin.
But here's the crazy part: is 10 people on a laptop in the 10 McDonald's cafes left in the world mm-hmm. could keep the Bitcoin network alive.
Really?
Yeah. And it wouldn't be as secure with 10 people, right. But it actually could still be remarkably secure if those people didn't know each other.
And everybody's lists, their canon is still accessible?
Yeah.
Can I have multiple accounts?
Yeah.
And they're all linked to my identity. How?
My
social security number?
No. If you go through a platform, just like you would go through a trading platform to buy stocks. If you go through a platform to buy Bitcoin, excuse me, if you go through a platform to buy Bitcoin, you have to do know your customer stuff, which means that you have to put in your driver's license info, just like you would doing business and with most companies. But if you you can create a Bitcoin wallet that is not under that level of surveillance.
And you can still play with everybody else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This thing's almost it's almost too vast.
Yeah, I agree. It
You literally
really
have to
is
become an expert to play.
No, you don't.
How?
You need to believe that it will work.
Well, just like you need to believe USD will work.
Yeah.
Someone can easily say, "I'll take that."
You have to believe that hotel door locks will work in order to stay at a hotel with computerized hotel door locks.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't believe that that door lock will function when you swipe your key card, you're gonna have a terrible time trying to stay at that hotel. At every point of every culture, there's a point where you have to go, I think that'll work. And when I look at how big the Bitcoin network is, it's jaw-dropping. It's one of the biggest things I've ever seen. And people are still acting like it's debatable if it's a force on the world stage. And it's already one of the biggest things I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like how can you look at a collection of money that's larger than the market cap of the largest financial company out there and not think that's a force to be reckoned with?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a force to be reckoned with, backed by mathematics, code, and ideals, and a system of checks and balances.
Very interesting.
It's a fascinating space.
So Bitcoin can only exist on the internet as we know it.
I have no clue if it could exist on a different system. I mean, it would require electricity. I don't know if it's internet specifically. No clue there.
Yeah, I have friends that are radical in terms of deregulated internet, right?
Yeah.
So they don't.
They're working on that too. They're actually using blockchain to develop ways to supply new top-level domains that make it so that you can own a top-level domain without, permission or being controlled over it.
What are your thoughts on Facebook's coin?
They might do it. They might not.
They've done it, haven't they? It's called something.
Oh, they made it.
Yeah.
I thought they got shut down before they got there.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's rushing to do it.
Yeah,
like
Apple, I'm sure, wants their own.
Yeah, China's well on their way. The U.S. is, trying their darndest.
That's not gonna happen.
They're going pretty sluggish, but they're trying.
It will not happen. But, yeah, so you feel.
Well, that's it. Hold on. So one thing is, it will happen. They will do it.
America.
Every single country on Earth will have a cryptocurrency, or they will disappear.
Every country already has a currency.
Yes.
They want to rebrand their currency.
Yeah. Every single country will eventually adopt some form of digital currency, because it would be stupid not to.
Not contingent on gold.
And I don't know that there's a single currency right now contingent on gold. But the way you figure out if it's going to go digital is you just extrapolate a little bit. And the way you extrapolate is space. If you want to have a multiplanetary species, you can't have anything except for a digital currency. There's no other way to function. Otherwise, it's just all-out war all the time.
Yeah, but then it just becomes Earth currency.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we always like to have our own identity.
Right. No. I agree with you though. If I want to buy Mars product, it has to be with the same currency.
Yeah. It has to be something that can be transferred easily with the least amount of misunderstanding and violence.
So how do I see Josh Terry's ledger?
So you don't see mine. You see the list that is all of Bitcoin.
I don't understand.
It's one file. It's one file held on computers all around the world that's updated at the same time, and they're all checked amongst themselves.
What do I see when I look at that list?
It's like a notepad file.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
And I can see your history there.
I mean, you would have to know what my number identification is to do
I see.
that.
I see. And that's supposed to be private.
Um,
That's your account number, essentially.
it's I'd say it's at a point these days where it's like private-ish, because like I said, criminal activity is dropping because people are figuring out how to find people on there. And it's like, well, is that better or worse? You know, there are some people that think it's worse. But there is like I really like, personal independence and, people being able to protect themselves and, the world not getting into an individual's business and all that stuff. But the reality is, if you want to live in a society, there is always a point at which you have to play the game or get out. And
If you want the perks and conveniences
yes,
of the society.
yeah. And Bitcoin is a system that is so fixed that, we can do things like track a criminal and figure out through a set of purchases who that might have been. But also, interestingly enough, you can't take that criminal's Bitcoin.
Nobody can?
Not if they don't give up the number. So in some ways, yeah, maybe
That's very powerful.
Yeah, maybe it does take up, some personal.
The government can't do that?
Nobody can take somebody's Bitcoin unless they give it.
So nobody can crack into the Bitcoin and see my number, my password, and all that?
You can't see your password.
But you need to access my funds.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you memorize your password and burn it, nobody gets to take your Bitcoin.
No way. Really? Even if I'm Ted Bundy?
That's correct.
Even if I'm Al Capone?
That's correct.
Really?
Yeah, also if you're a revolutionary that's trying to change the world. Like, it doesn't matter.
And I can say, I have 10 million Bitcoin. Yeah, no one can touch this. Can I give that Bitcoin to my next of kin?
Yes.
Can I transfer my Bitcoin to their purse or coin or whatever wallet?
Yes. You can memorize a number on a computer in an oppressed country and escape that country with nothing but the clothes off your back. And then go into another country and get your Bitcoin and live a life.
This is one step towards globalism, which is an inevitability. That is a beautiful thing.
It's what it is it's
this can solve like slavery.
It can help.
It can eradicate slavery, I should say.
It has the potential.
Because why are, I was going for a walk and I saw these Mexicans, 10 out of 10, Mexicans building a Whataburger near my house. And I couldn't help but wonder, man, this is such a laborious, thank you to the workers who are doing this work, building the apartments, the houses, the restaurants. I hope they're compensated fairly, and I suspect they're not. I suspect they're probably not American citizens as well, some of them, and therefore they may be treated differently. But if everybody was on the Bitcoin, they would be compensated fairly. How could they not be?
Well, I mean, nothing fixes everything, and I find
you could
Bitcoin
pay a Mexican citizen $5 an hour, take it or leave it. But I have a legal obligation to pay an American citizen $15 an hour. But I'm going to pay you guys $5 an hour. Take it or leave it. You don't like it? There'll be another illegal immigrant that can take your place, but not on the Bitcoin. Why would it be like that on the Bitcoin?
Well,
I would know if it's public information that this person's getting paid $20 a Bitcoin for this job. Therefore, you're going to pay me the same because my citizenship, it doesn't matter. You're paying me this money. It transcends citizenship.
It makes things more clear. And I really want to make the point that it doesn't necessarily solve every problem because problems are complicated. But it has immense potential to help. And I actually like the thing I've noticed about Bitcoin is, I mean, what you just described, it's the same thing that happens to everybody when Bitcoin clicks. Is it's like, oh my God, this, there's like utopian concepts within this, and that actually like makes me nervous because I'm like, okay, well, hold off, guys. Let's notice that like there's still a lot of things going wrong, but and it makes me cautious when something looks that good. But the potential, I don't think the utility is deniable. I don't know about the ideals in terms of what it could possibly do. Like there are people that believe that it could end wars, right? And it's like there's a lot of reasons to have a war. So, that's not necessarily the case. But it can make things better. And that's more than enough.
What it does, though, is levels of play. It's like a language we're all speaking.
Yes,
and one of the reasons
that is what it is.
One of the reasons that we do go to war is due to some sort of discrepancy, whether
miscommunication.
It's class, miscommunication. You're going to come to my country, you're going to occupy it, you're going to take my resources because we don't know what we have.
Bitcoin is the most clear economic language ever developed.
There you go. So when that's the case and we're all fluent in that language and it becomes ubiquitous, there is a sort of class fairness to that.
I think it's possible. I think it could help and push us in that direction in a big way.
Explain this to me. This is like one of the last things I don't understand. $1, $1 American USD dollar. You know what a dollar can get you in this country. So what is the Bitcoin equivalent? I don't understand.
So it changes, right? So Bitcoin in relation,
very volatile to me.
Yeah. So Bitcoin in relation to itself is more stable than most things because there's a limited number of them. But Bitcoin in relation to other things is changing depending on how much people value Bitcoin. So right now it's highly volatile because it's a new thing. It's, kind of sweeping the globe in a lot of different ways. And our economic systems are in turmoil. So every other currency is changing in value. The US dollar is, the China dollar is, all the other dollars are changing in value. So in some ways, I mean, I kind of hesitate to say this because it sounds like a stretch. But in some ways, you could argue that Bitcoin is the stable element where everything else is moving. And the reason why I would say something like that, and I know it sounds like a stretch, but the reason why I would say something like that is imagine a painting of a Monet. When the Monet gets older, the price goes up. So does that mean that it changed in value? Well, it did in some ways, in that we care about it more. But the Monet didn't change. The Monet is stationary. It's the stable element. We've changed. So what we've done is we've
in
managed
relation to time.
Yeah, we've changed in relation to time. We've changed in our perception. Our dollars have changed in value, right? All of those things have changed while the Monet's just sitting there. And with all of that happening, we conclude that we would be happy to pay more for the Monet. So we've managed to create something that is as stable as a Monet, actually more stable because the Monet eventually will break down over time. We've created something that's as stable as a Monet that all of us can obtain and or exchange. So it's potentially, yeah.
What language you speak.
Yeah, it's potentially one of the most stable assets ever created, even though it's extremely volatile because the world is changing, right?
Right. It's volatile because it's so fluid, which is good. because it means it has room to grow, and you can include anybody. So it would be volatile. What excites me is it being a language for everybody. There's an inherent security factor in that. The Mexicans can see what it means here, you know, and that adds value to their Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin has some of the widest adoption in countries that are doing worse economically. Because once again, and I want to go back to the utility of it. Like, I mean, the ideals are great, and they're like, I love thinking about like all the possibilities with Bitcoin. It really does create opportunities that weren't there before. But the simple utility of the fact that it works, and so it's
Right.
it's one of them. It has such a wide adoption, for example, in Africa, where currencies and borders are so complex.
Mm-hmm.
So people are doing business in Bitcoin. And there's one other element I suppose I should go into is I said that there's sort of a utility element and a philosophy element. They're in the end they're both utility, but the basic utility was that store of value from the standpoint of a savings account, right?
Mm-hmm.
All I'm going to do is I'm going to extrapolate that out to the other end of the spectrum, and that is there are still plenty of people that want to build pyramids. There are still plenty of people who have accomplished astonishing things in the world, and they want to leave a legacy, including that guy with a savings account that had a regular job. So it's like with Bitcoin, it's possible for that, somebody to collect a massive storehold of wealth and program a program to dispense money to a caretaker of a park for centuries without retaining 50 lawyers to get it done.
Bypassing bureaucracy.
Yeah. And there's ways to set up checks and balances so that that thing gets done or the people don't get the money.
Right, and the reason isn't necessarily important.
Yeah.
Like the reason why.
I mean, you could have every generation delivered flowers, for the next 500 years or whatever.
If you wanted to.
Yeah. And so the basic utility is having a life that gets better over time. That is the basic utility in the sense that you are able to store value and retain it, which means that your life is cumulative. It's additive. You're putting things in. You're more wealthy. You're able to take advantage of that wealth as you get older, and all of the safety and predictability and health and wealth that comes with that idea. The other end of it is legacy, which is, I mean, what's the dream? The dream is immortality, right? That's the thing we all look for. So
generational wealth.
Yes, it's the most secure method of creating generational wealth that we've come up with.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I do get that. So
sorry. One other thing.
Please.
I also want to point out that sometimes we look at generational wealth from a sort of jaded eye these days. Like, oh, those people that are living off of generational wealth. Okay, cool. So you don't like those people that lived off of generational wealth. Think about what you want for your kid. That's the thing to always do when you think about generational wealth, is whether or not, you resent some specific percentile of the universe. Everybody wants their children to have a better life than theirs. And Bitcoin enables a possibility of one aspect of that, the economic aspect.
It's in the the marrow, the genes, the dogma of Bitcoin.
We want to be better, and it's ingrained in Bitcoin that we can have a fixed thing that allows us to do so.
What is your relationship to Bitcoin? Are you trying to coach people, teach people? What are you trying to do in this space?
I'm trying to buy it and hold it because that's the name of the game, and
It's expensive.
It's any price you want to pay.
I don't understand.
You can buy $10 of it.
10 American USD.
Yep.
Of
and it just
Bitcoin.
means you own 0.00 whatever amount of Bitcoin. You don't have to buy a Bitcoin. You purchase fractions of Bitcoin. And it doesn't, it's just like you can have 50 cents or 25 cents, right? So yeah, and some people think they can only own one, and it's like, I don't know, last time I looked, it was around 50 grand-ish, somewhere around there. It's like, oh, I don't have 50 grand. Well, you don't have to spend 50 grand on a Bitcoin. You can spend $10 worth to own $10 worth of Bitcoin. So it's something that's divisible.
I see. And you're trying to buy more of it.
I'm trying to buy more of it, and because I think it's good. I think it works. I want to engage in that utility, right? I want to store my value in it. In terms of what else I'm trying to do with it, I'm trying to get involved in the space. I find the crypto community fascinating, so I'm trying to get to know folks in that space, and then I'm trying to show that it's a reasonable thing. I'm trying to show that it's not a wild idea. It's a wild idea in the sense that it's amazing that somebody came up with it.
It's like explaining the internet to somebody.
Yes, exactly. But it's not a wild idea in the sense of you can use a phone to write a text, right? It's like that's not a wild idea. People do it every day.
But there was a time.
Yeah. So it's like if you try to convince somebody of the concept of using a computer, they'd be like, this is crazy.
Right.
But if you're like, look, you can use this tool to make a spreadsheet faster than you would by hand, they'd be like, hell yeah, I'm using it.
Right, the utility.
Yeah, so I'm trying to emphasize for folks that are curious about the space that, hey, this is a useful thing to store value with. And I think it's worth being involved in and holding. And I'm trying to hold on to as much as I can. I think it's one of the more secure ways I can build wealth, and I want to encourage other people to explore the space too.
That answers my question. Thank you, man. I'm gonna cut. That was